Broncos fans. Now I'm going to have to contain my excitement. We have some great stuff to talk about today, Broncos camp, but I'm going to wait till we get all of the streams connected. And once those are live, we'll be good to go. And we are officially live. So again, good morning, all you Broncos fans out there. I'm very excited for today's show. We have a lot of things to talk about, some pretty good tidbits coming out of camp. I'm your host, Thomas Hall. This is Legends of Mile High, where we talk about history and current events with the goal of keeping this storied history of this franchise alive. And we will conclude again today, as we normally do, with a Mile High legend. We've got a good one. We're going to talk about an afterthought in a trade that became a Broncos Ring of Famer. So stick around and check that out. That'll be a great one. Also, I'm going to be live at camp, bringing you the scoop pretty soon. So get your burning questions into the comments, into the chat, or you can, comment. You can send me a Twitter at Thomas Hall NFL, and I will see if I can get those answered for you at camp after they've been going for about a week and a half. So we'll be fully into camp. I think those questions will be answered soon enough. So please, I'll make a list and we will get going on that. And before we get started, let's just check into the chat here. We've got Jeremy Sean again. Good morning, Thomas and Broncos country. Well, good morning to you, Jeremy. Thank you for being a loyal watcher of this show. And don't forget about Scott in the background. He is making the stuff run. So let's make sure we say good morning to him as well. EJ, another person that I see on here all the time. Good morning, Thomas and Broncos country. Happy Friday. Training camp was great yesterday. John, thanks for checking in. Dehera. Hopefully I didn't mess that name up too much. Let's go, Broncos. Good morning, Broncos country. Eric Saubert has been killing it so far. Well, thank you for that. I am going to get into some training camp stuff, and Eric Saubert is somebody I'm going to talk about today for sure. So let's talk a little bit before we jump into that. I want to just mention that next week we're going to have a guest on the show, Jack Silverstein. He is a sports writer and researcher. And when I say researcher, I want you to know that he doesn't just look at Google. This guy digs into newspaper clippings. He goes to the library, checks out the old microfiche or film or whatever it's called, and he digs into the details. And it's amazing to see what he comes up with. And we're going to be talking about a Broncos legend, and it's going to be a perspective from two different fan bases. So tune in. Some great information coming up next week. Dale Fleming. Good morning, Thomas, Scott, Jeremy, EJ, and John. Good morning to you. Thank you for being on the show again. Kevin Gray, fan since 68. Floyd is still my hero. Let's ride. Floyd Little is awesome. Thank you for checking in. Jeremy Bales, good morning. Thank you, everyone, for checking in. We got a great show. We're going to dive in to some really, really, really interesting topics, a couple different ones. Dale, good to be here. I am glad you're here. I see you on here almost every morning, if not every morning. So thank you for checking in. We got Alden Fish. Good morning, Thomas. Enjoy the show and insight. All right. Well, thank you very much, Alden. I appreciate that. We have a couple more to check in. Michael, good morning, Thomas Hall on Legends of Mile High. Let's ride and go Broncos. Well, good morning, Michael. Thank you for always being on this show, always being on all the shows, giving us your support. It is greatly appreciated. Everybody that puts stuff in the comments makes this show and other shows really get going with some good content. So thank you. Thank you for joining. And I really appreciate it. And this is why I do the show, is so that we can talk about Broncos, maybe learn a few things, hopefully. So that's awesome. Before we get started, I just want to make one mention, the end of an era, really, the end of the Bowlen era in Denver. It's bittersweet for me. I'm Pat Bowlen, made this team, as an owner, really his ownership made this team incredibly good. And, Brittany Bowlen stepped down from the team, which kind of marks the end. I mean, there's Patrick Bowlen III still is facilities coordinator. So there's still a little bit left, but for all intents and purposes, the Bowlen era is over. So it's like I said, that's bittersweet for me. I loved watching this team when under his era. I started slightly before he became the owner, so it's a little bit sad. But the great thing is there's new excitement, new stuff going on, and we've got camp in full swing, new ownership, new head coach, new quarterback. There's a lot of great things to be excited about. And before we really get started on that, I just want to make mention of 3 Broncos who are still in the running to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So Mike Shanahan is one of those. Incredible coach. If you line him up to many of the coaches that are in the Hall of Fame, including Bill Cowher, who got in a few rotations ago, he's just as good or better than many of them. So he definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. We've got Dan Reeves, a coach who is kind of one of those that people seem to not like or like a lot. I really like Dan Reeves. I think he was an incredible coach. I know he gets a lot of flack for being very conservative and not really unleashing Elway, but he was able to create an incredible team around him. And I'm talking about bringing great coaches. He's a great leader. He's able to put his strategy together onto the field, went to 3 Super Bowls with the Broncos, went to 9 Super Bowls in total, which was the most in history until, of course, we had the Belichick-Brady era. That's an incredible feat. He deserves of the Hall of Fame. And then finally, we have Randy Gradishar, the biggest snub of Hall of Fame candidates of all time. Everybody else that was a snub that I considered like a huge snub is now in. He's kind of the last one. There's several more deserving players, but he's the biggest snub. The only player not in the Hall of Fame who has won Defensive Player of the Year in the 70s and 80s, at least 5 Pro Bowl invitations, and at least 2 first-team All-Pros who's not in the Hall of Fame. Everyone else that's done that is in the Hall of Fame. It's his time. I think this is his year, and I cannot wait to see him finally inducted, right or wrong, that has been going on for far too long. So those are your 3 Broncos. If anybody has any questions about that, throw it in the chat. I'll definitely address it. But if not, we are going to start to talk about some training camp. And there's a few things that I really want to address because there's some weaknesses on this team that were identified before camp started, some question marks surrounding the team. And one of those was inside linebacker. And we're going to talk about that. Another one that I had a question mark around was tight end. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about edge, maybe if we have time, edge rusher. And then maybe if we have time, a little bit about the cornerbacks. So those were all question marks in my mind, not the starters at cornerback, obviously, but the depth was a question mark. Before we jump in, Michael has a comment. Mike Shanahan, Randy Gradishar, great Broncos coach and player. Hope they get in soon. Yes, I doubt that the voters are going to put 2 Broncos in, but Randy Gradishar, I almost would lay money, lots of money on that he gets in this year. There's so much support. There's a lot of voters that are even talking about him. A lot of media members are really pushing for him to get in. I think it's his year. 3 senior candidates are going to get in. Mike Shanahan deserves it. So does Dan Reeves. They may have to wait. I know Dan Reeves passing a lot of times that provokes a little more voter interest maybe, and they get people in after they've passed, which is unfortunate. But he may have. But I doubt the voters put 2 Broncos in a year. Maybe they will, but let's hope so. All right, let's jump into camp. So we're going to talk about a question that we had, or a comment, Eric Saubert, tight end. There was some definite question marks about tight end, in my opinion. I mean, I like Albert Quinnabaum, but he's got a lot to prove, I think, after Noah Fant left. Definitely a fast field stretcher type tight end. I think he's going to be a pretty good tight end in this system. Play a little bit in the slot. And then after him, there really wasn't a whole lot, in my opinion. We had Eric Tomlinson coming in. He's a blocker type, not much of a pass catcher. And then we had the draft choice, third round draft choice, Greg Dulcet. He's got potential, great potential, fun guy. I love his interviews already. But he's been injured, so he's going to take some time to develop. And the tight end position typically takes time to develop in the NFL. So back when they were in free agency, I was always talking about they need to re-sign Eric Saubert. Eric Saubert, to me, had a lot of potential to be a good tight end. He's pretty athletic, good pass catcher, well-rounded, pretty good blocker. He never really got a lot of opportunities in the NFL, but I always felt that if he could put it all together, he'd be a good tight end. And he seems to be, obviously, his first 2 days in camp, so you can't overreact. There's no pads, but he looks really good. He's been working with Russell Wilson a lot, and I think that that helps because comfortableness with the quarterback. Quarterback knowing where to go with the ball to the tight end, even early on, is very helpful to get him onto the field more often. So for me, I think if Saubert can continue along that path of where he's at, he might surprise some people. Now, are they going to keep 4 tight ends? Or are they going to get rid of Tomlinson? So they only take 3. That's a tough one. But if Saubert continues to play the way he has in the first few days of camp, throughout camp and into preseason, it's going to be hard to get rid of him. And they may decide to keep 4, with the receiving core that they have at the top end. That makes sense. I mean, you've got 4 great receivers with a lot of potential at the top end. They may end up only keeping 5 wide receivers and 4 tight ends. Who knows? We'll see. But I think Saubert has all reports. He's looking really good coming to camp. And I think that helps anybody who's thinking there's some doubt at that depth at tight end. So I will be watching him specifically when I'm there. And on the 8th and 9th, we'll have several days of practice. So we'll know who's starting to stand out right before preseason starts and who isn't. So I'll definitely keep an eye on the tight end position. So I'm going to jump back to the Hall of Fame. We've got Dale asking, did Dan Reeves make the Hall of Fame as a player? No, he did not. Dan Reeves, he was not an incredible player, but he was a solid player. He stepped in, won a Super Bowl as a player, and then he became a coach. Dallas Cowboys won another Super Bowl. He's been to 9 Super Bowls, which is incredible. And he turned around the Falcons franchise. Really, I mean, the Falcons, and I know Scott's going to hate me saying this, but they were a miserable franchise for a very long time. Dan Reeves became the coach and got him to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, if you're going to judge somebody on his ability to coach a team and get them to the Super Bowl, obviously they didn't win it. You look at the Falcons and what had happened for many years when they became a franchise, and then what Dan Reeves did. It's incredible. I mean, he's deserving of the Hall of Fame. And again, like I said, you get a bad rap when you're conservative and you don't use your star quarterback the way everyone wants to. But his game plans were good. He got the teams that he took to the Super Bowl were outmatched in that Super Bowl. But it's an incredible feat to get there with a team that really had some weaknesses in many spots. So Dan Reeves definitely a deserving candidate for the Hall of Fame. All right. Now, next, what I love the linebacker position, inside linebacker position. I actually played it when I was younger. I love to watch that side of the ball. And I know that the inside linebacker position is kind of going into the background. It used to be, if you were the heart of the defense, if you were the middle linebacker, inside linebacker, and that's what made the defense run. It's not as important now, but I still love watching it. And there was definitely question marks around the inside linebacker position on this Broncos team. You had Josie Jewell coming back from injury. His first couple games last season, he looked like he was going to, really explode and become one of those household names I know people don't really care for Jewel because he's not as fast as in a 40-yard dash as people would like to see. I mean, he's obviously fully recovered from his pec injury. Just happened way back in game 2, I believe, or game 3 last season. So he's fully healed. I think he's going to be your main guy. But that other position was the biggest question mark. And you had a kind of a hodgepodge of people. They didn't really go out and grab any big name to slot alongside Jules. So they were running with their free agent pickup from the Eagles and the holdover from last year, Jonas Griffith. And that was the question. Is that going to be enough? And so far, to start out camp, you've got Jonas Griffith jumping off, just popping out in front of everybody. Now, there's no pads again, but you can judge how someone reads and reacts from the inside linebacker position without pads. Now, you can't tell if he's going to be a great tackler. You can't tell how physical he's going to be, a lot of times without pads, but he's reading and reacting really well. And those 4 games that he put together at the end of last season, we were really wondering, is that a flash in the pan, or is that a sign, a glimpse into the future? And so far in camp, it looks like it's a glimpse into the future. So it's very promising. He's a big, tall, pretty athletic for his size. So I think he's really continuing where he left off, and that is a great sign. I think he could be the surprise of this season. So EJ's asking, Thomas, who's your biggest surprise players that's been doing good and player disappointing? Well, I can answer that question better when I go to camp and watch. But right now, my personal choice for kind of a surprise was Montreal Washington. I thought he was going to come out, win the return duties, which he already is. He's pretty much, it's his to lose. But I thought he's going to be able to be a gadget player on offense and also catch some balls on offense as a rookie. That's a surprise, to a lot of people for someone to say that. But so far in camp, from what we have seen and heard, he is doing quite well and way, way farther ahead than people anticipated for a, mid-round draft choice. I think he's going to surprise. Obviously, he's not going to have a ton of passes to catch with the 4 receivers that are on the team, but he's going to come in. If you look at last year, you look at Deontay Spencer. They tried to get him some gadget plays in there, and he didn't really perform that well. He was a decent returner, but not great. I think Washington's going to be an upgrade to that. You're going to see him get onto the field, maybe take some carries, from reverses or something like that out of the backfield, catch a few balls, but return specialist. I think that is a big surprise already for a rookie. I don't know about any players disappointing yet. I think there's some disappointment around the offensive line with health issues, and that's unfortunate. You've got Billy Turner, who was supposed to, be the starter at right tackle. He had some promise, already familiar with the scheme, and he's injured. He's on the PUP list. We don't know when he's going to get on the field. Tom Compton, another player who I liked as a rotational piece who could play all along pretty much the offensive line. He had back surgery. He's on the PUP list. So, I mean, that's disappointing to me right out of the gate. We had to bring back, the team brought back Cameron Fleming, who, he's an all right player, not a great player by any means. I mean, this opens the door for Calvin Anderson, who I picked as the big breakout player this year. I actually thought he was going to win the right tackle job. And I know that sounds crazy because, this guy's undrafted, but the zone blocking scheme has a history, especially at the Broncos, of finding these undrafted late round players and turning them in to something special. Calvin Anderson has improved every season he has been in the league. Started out, I believe, in 2018. He's been kicked around practice squads. He's been able to get on the field the last couple of seasons, and he's improved. So if he can continue with that trajectory, and there's really not much else, behind him as competition, he's going to get a lot of reps in camp. at right tackle, and he may be the starter week 1, and he may not relinquish that starting duty. So I'm going to definitely watch that right tackle battle when I'm in camp. So I think I really have a good feeling about Calvin Anderson. And Dale says, I guess Cam Fleming could be a disappointment. Yeah, I mean, it's a, they let him go for a reason. He didn't perform great, but I will tell you, there's been talk between, why didn't they bring back Massey from last year? He played a lot better. Well, I think it has to do with the fact that Massey's more of a mauler, kind of more fit for the power run game. This zone blocking scheme requires a little more athleticism, and I think Fleming has the opportunity to be a little bit better in that scheme. So I think that's maybe why they brought him back instead. But if he's the starter, then, we're definitely going to, look at right tackle as, a big question mark if he's the starter come camp, because there was a lot of promise about the right tackle position with all the people they brought in to compete with that for that position. So I'm definitely going to be checking that out. So I'm going to be checking out the inside linebacker, definitely right tackle. I'm going to be watching that closely, and also going to be watching the edge rusher position. We have, a lot. We're looking at this team at the edge rusher position, and on paper, man, it looks solid, but there's health issues, and that's. Are we going to be able to see the depth step up? And that's a big question mark. And Randy Gregory is not going to be ready until week 1. And I guarantee you he's not going to be ready to roll full steam ahead week 1. He's going to be rusty. He's going to need to take some time in practice, get back in football shape. So you're going to have to see either Baron Browning, Nick Bonito, Cooper, maybe one of these guys. Malik Reed has to step up and be a solid starter. And we definitely see some depth on this team, but there's a lot of question marks around that depth. So from what I'm hearing and seeing from a lot of people at camp, we have our own Luke Patterson is in camp. He's going to be there every day. I pay attention to what he's talking about and others. And we're also going to have Carl. He's going to be at camp for a few days as well. Hopefully they'll bring some more light before I go to camp. But I'll tell you, Nick Bonito looks fast off the line. Obviously, it's hard to judge without pads on just how he can do when it really becomes physical. But right now, Bonito's looking pretty good. So hopefully he's going to be able to step in and be that really solid edge depth that we're looking for when we're watching the Broncos. I got a question from EJ. Comment from EJ. I really love what Draymond Jones is doing thus far in camp. Hopefully it's his breakout season. Yeah, I've actually been on Luke's show talking about Draymond Jones. I did an analysis on him, and he's due for a breakout season. I've actually predicted he might get about 10 sacks this year, which is going to be huge. And the reason I say that is because if you look at all the pass rushing stats, indicators of a good pass rusher from the interior, you got Draymond Jones. Every single category has increased every season significantly, except last year. His sack total didn't increase to where it should have based on all the other metrics that you're looking at in a pass rusher. I don't know why that is. He just wasn't finishing, but I think this year he's going to finish. And so you're going to see an increase in sacks by quite a bit. You're probably going to see 3 or 4. 10 is my limit. I think he could get there if he finishes that. But you're going to see eight sacks out of him this year, which is good from the interior. If he gets to 10, it's great. I mean, you look at last year's interior passers minus Aaron Donald, of course. You've got other people that are hitting, 9 or 10 that are, good players been to the Pro Bowl, set some all pros. That's a good production from the interior. And he's going to have to step up and hit those numbers, because if you're, have to start a rookie or Malik Reed or someone like that instead of Randy Gregory out of the gate, you're going to need that interior pass rush. So my guess is he's going to have more opportunities too. This offense looks good. It's going to score some points, You're going to have people playing catch up, and he is going to, he's going to get way more opportunities. So you're going to, sacks are the big thing that people look at, and you're going to see a lot of sacks out of him. So I'm looking forward to watching Draymond Jones. So, Kevin Gray, pads start tomorrow. I don't know. That's a good question. I know they're limited to only a few practices with pads. It's funny. Dale Fleming Monday, I believe, Kevin. Okay. Well, we've got a lot. Jeremy says it's Saturday. I don't know. It would be cool if it was Saturday. I know that we're going to be anxious to see them get pads. I mean, the sound of pads hitting each other, there's no better sound. You smell the grass, the fall air in the air brings you back to the football days. And then when you start to hear the pads crashing against one another, that is when football has arrived. And I cannot wait. But they're only going to have a few. I can't remember the rules, but it's very few padded practices where they're actually tackling and hitting. So preseason and this practice with Dallas Cowboys is going to be a big factor in determining who's really the starters on some of these physical positions, like inside linebacker, edge rusher. Just how good are they against the physicality when the pads go on? Running backs, another one that you really need to get pads on to see how good they're going to be. So it's going to be fun. I cannot wait to go to camp. I can't wait to go check this out. And hopefully there'll be some Broncos legends there while I'm there so I can meet them, talk to them in person. So that'll be fun. Now, the last little piece that I want to kind of talk about is the cornerback depth. And there's some question marks around there. But Michael Ojemudia seems to be really popping off the screen, in the eyes of people that are watching right now. He seems to be really progressing, and I liked him. When they drafted him, I was a little suspicious about the first few games I saw him. I thought he was pretty good. He's been struggling with injuries, and he just hasn't really been able to put it all together yet. But another promising, view into the future is how good he's. He's kind of progressing this season. He stays healthy. He's going to be that fourth cornerback. And I think that's a good thing. I think he's a pretty good player if he can put it all together and stay healthy. So we'll see. Back to the edge rusher, Nick Bonito. EJ says Nick Bonito may be the wake-up call Chubb needs this year. I don't think Chubb, I don't know if he needs a wake-up call. From what I'm hearing, he is man possessed this year. He is looks like he did even better than his rookie season. Reports are saying he's pretty, coaches say he's pretty much unblockable. Jeremy is agreeing with me. I don't think Chubb needs a wake-up call. He needs to stay healthy. Absolutely, Jeremy. I think that has been his problem. He's got a world of talent. He's just not been able to stay on the field, and he's had lingering issues. Even last season, he came back from that injury, but it still lingered. He didn't get any sacks, and I think he knows that this is the year that he has to show that he can stay healthy and he can perform on the field. And from all reports, he's ready to go. And this is important for the Broncos. He has to stay healthy. He's the star pass rusher. I know they went out and spent a lot of big money on Randy Gregory, but Chubb is the star pass rusher. He should get the most sacks. He should be the one that's really setting the tone for the pass rush. I mean, Gregory has a lot of potential. He does, he gets a lot of pressures and whatnot, but I think the most sacks he's ever had is 6. So Chubb's going to be the guy. And plus, Gregory's going to be working his way back from injury. I don't expect him to be fully up to speed, at least until week 3. I mean, when you sit out all of training camp, you sit out all of preseason, it's going to take you a while to get back into football shape. So Chubb has to perform, and it's his contract year, really. I mean, he if he wants to, get that big free agent contract or stay with a big contract in Denver, he's going to need to show what he can do this season. So there's a lot of motivating factors for Chubb, for sure. But again, it's his health that has to be, stay well. He has to stay well. That's the big question. Can he stay healthy for a full season? Excuse me. The other the other intriguing part of the edge rushers is, you got Baron Browning switching from inside linebacker to edge rusher. From what I've heard, he seems to be making that switch well. He's an athletic guy. He's solid. He's I don't know if you look at his measurables, is he the right fit for edge rusher? I mean, he seems a little bit short, a little bit light, but he's quick and athletic. He could step up. Malik Reed has always been a good pass rusher for this team. I don't think he's a solid starter for this team, but good pass rushing depth. And then you've got a few other names. I mean, Jonathan Cooper's come back from injury that he sustained in OTAs. He is a great story, man. I hope this guy makes it in the NFL because what he's had to go through. If he can be the depth, that's great. He had a good season last year for a late round rookie. So we've got some options. And then, you've got Christopher Allen. He's on the non-football injury list, suffering from his college injury that really dropped his stock value in the draft. But he could be another player that, steps up that you don't even know about, a surprise. So there's a few things that need to be worked out. Definitely going to be watching that in camp. After a couple of weeks, you're going to see who's starting to stand out and who isn't. So definitely going to check that out. So again, put your comments into the chat, questions that you have for me. I'm going to definitely check that out next week. Put it into the YouTube comments, or you can talk to me directly at Thomas Hall NFL on Twitter. Follow me on there, and you can get some good training camp tidbits when I'm out there. And again, don't forget, guest next week. Jack Silverstein, incredible researcher. He's going to be fun to listen to. A legend, I guess I would say. I would call him a legend of Mile High, and that we'll be talking about from a couple different perspectives. So let's don't forget to tune in. I'm going to just check the chat for a few more questions if we have any about camp or about the Hall of Fame. EJ Browning could be a hybrid outside linebacker, middle linebacker. I'm not so sure about the inside linebacker depth this year. Yeah, I think he could be as well. If he can have that versatility, that'd be great. My personal opinion is if he's going to be an edge rusher, let's make sure he stays there. I mean, it's bad enough that he learned a position last year and then has to switch because he was still learning inside linebacker. Even though he was doing great, he still had a lot to learn. So now he's at edge. He could be in a pinch, one of those that starts at edge and switches to inside linebacker. But there's only few people that can do that. Carl Mecklenburg being one that can do that sort of thing, and maybe Browning can do that. I'd like to get Mecklenburg's take on that. It's a difficult position. He talked about it a while back, how difficult it is to make the switch. And when you're an edge rusher, you're not in the mix all the time. So, if they're running away from you, you don't get into the mix. So it's a tough deal to do that switching. And, but like you said, EJ, there's not a lot of depth or quality depth that we can see right now in the inside linebacker position. So it may be something that becomes a necessity. So we may see him doing that out of necessity. So, that's definitely something I'm going to be watching for when I'm out there. And then Jeremy, Sean, I'm excited to see what Cooper will do with full season under his belt. Absolutely. The problem is he's still kind of coming back from that injury to his thumb and OTAs. He's not on the PUP list, which I kind of thought he may go on the PUP list, but he may be full go. So we'll see. Hopefully there's no lingering effects from that. I'm excited for Cooper. Like I said, he's a great story, man. The adversity he's faced, to get onto the NFL field is incredible. So I don't want to put any doubt, if I'm going to put my money on somebody like that, right? Someone who can come back from adversity and still perform on the field. He's one to root for sure. So, one last question or comment here is I've also heard positive things about PJ Locke. Jeremy, thank you again for that. Yeah, I have too. When I first started thinking about this roster, I thought PJ Locke may be, one of those guys that don't make the cut due to, some draft choices. He's making it hard on the coaches to make that decision from what I hear. I'll definitely be watching the safety position. I thought that, they picked up, a fourth round or fifth rounder in the draft this year. And, there's going to be some safeties that get bumped off the team. Jamar Johnson, PJ Locke. We've got a lot of competition for that fourth safety position. So, but they may keep 5. I don't know. It's hard to say with this new coaching staff. I've looked at the Packers in the past to see kind of, what their final roster, when they set it in September, what it was going to be. So we don't know. I know there was some odd stuff that happened, in Fangio where they kept, I think, 6 or 5 inside linebackers versus other areas, which was, kind of a head scratcher at times. But the big thing is, PJ Locke, great special teams guy. They need special teams players. Anytime that you're a depth player, you need to perform on special teams, and he's proven to do that. So that might be his ticket again to the roster, and I look forward to it. I look forward to the competition because there's going to be some major competition for that last few spots in the safety area. Okay, well, thank you very much for the comments. I'm going to go back and check out some of the comments within the live chat to try and look for that when we go to when I go to camp. Again, put it in the comments or hit me up on Twitter. I'll definitely look for any of those questions that you may have. So I'm going to wind down the show as I always do with the Mile High Legend. But again, don't forget, next week we got a special guest. So tune in for that. It's going to be fun, very fun conversation. So now for today's Mile High Legend. The Denver Broncos made a trade with their AFL rivals, the Oakland Raiders, in 1967 that landed them one of the greatest players in club history. And even more astonishing is that this player was a throw-in in the trade, and he was an afterthought. But it ended up being one of the greatest fleecings of a team in Broncos trade history. And it is difficult to make the Raiders out to be foolish in this trade because they had no idea what they had in this player. They were playing him out of position at linebacker when he was destined to be a star at defensive end. And the Broncos really can't take much credit as being the masterminds in the swindle either because they were targeting offensive linemen. The Broncos desperately needed offensive line help, so they packaged up a trade deal of Lionel Taylor and Jerry Sturm in order to get Richard Tyson, who was an offensive guard and their intended target. But in that trade, the Raiders sweetened the deal by throwing in 2 other players. And neither team had any idea what one of those players was to become. And one of those throw-in players became one of the greatest defensive linemen in NFL history. He had 3 of the greatest consecutive seasons from 68 to 70 for defensive linemen. And for that period, he was one of the most dominant defensive players in the game. He was so, those 3 seasons, he tallied double-digit sacks in each of those seasons, and he earned 3 first-team All-Pro awards and 3 trips to the AFL All-Star game. He was so dominant that a prominent Hall of Fame voter listed him as one of the greatest defenders of all time and actually lobbied for him to be enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, even though his career was extremely short. And he's also a member of the American Football League all-time team. In 1971, he was off to another great year, but in week 7, disaster struck. He suffered a major knee injury, and he was never able to return to his previous form. And he was soon traded from the team and then soon out of football altogether. But even though he was only able to play for a short time, his dominance was so incredible that he's a member of the Broncos Ring of Fame. He's also earned one of the greatest nicknames in all of football. That player was Rich Tombstone Jackson. The afterthought in a trade became a Broncos legend and one of the most dominant defenders in NFL history. That's your Mile High Legend. Thank you for joining and have a great day, Broncos fans.